cost, just because it was so important. A lot of rice in Yolo County. You'll see huge grain elevators where they dry and process rice, shipped all over the world. I had a tenant in an office building I managed who actually worked for a Japanese rice importer, and they would contract with growers to grow rice, specific varieties of rice, and he would actually go out and inspect the farms and monitor the rice cultivation and harvesting and processing for the importer. You know, the importer didn't want to just receive a shipload with 100-pound bags of rice. They wanted to know exactly what was in the bags. So his job was to, and he did all kinds of tests on for moisture and quality. Did all kinds of tests on the rice before it was processed, bagged, and shipped to Japan. So they were very particular about the quality of the rice. So anyway, this is the causeway on the right. I'm not sure how much camera view there is over the guardrail, but basically this is a flood channel, have an overflow flood channel for the Sacramento River. I mean, there are 3 or 4 major rivers that come right down to Sacramento, and when we have heavy rains and there's snow melt, there's just no way, even with levees, that the river channel can accommodate all that water flow. So they have a diversion. We're about 5 or 8 miles north of Sacramento, and when the river gets up to a certain height, they divert it into this 4 or 5 mile wide causeway. And there have been times when we've had week-long heavy tropical rainstorms, especially in the springtime when it also melts the snow in the Sierra. I've seen this causeway within a foot of the top of the levees and 4 or 5 miles wide, probably 25 feet deep, and the current flow has been very visible. I don't know how many knots, how many miles per hour, but very significant current flow. So there are times when there's an almost breathtaking amount of water that comes through this causeway. And the first houses that were built in Sacramento, we'll probably see this when we do the tour of Sacramento, but the first houses that were built in Sacramento, the first floor was built about 10 feet off the ground. So you went up this long, tall flight of stairs so that basically there was nothing. There was no finished space underneath the first floor, which was 10 feet off the ground. And it's just, because the reflooding, people would have to travel around in Sacramento in the wintertime, oftentimes in boats. So it's just what it was. I mean, they just didn't have the resources or the equipment or technology to build adequate levees. And the causeway also, even with levees, the causeway was critical to avoid constant flooding. So now it's just one of the quirks of Sacramento. You see all these houses built before 1920, and they all have these flights of stairs that go up about 8 to 10 feet. So we're on the east side of the causeway now, which is West Sacramento. And Sacramento used to be kind of an industrial, kind of funky, marginal town, cheap motels, a lot of hookers, inexpensive housing, whatever. But starting about 25 years ago, Sacramento started growing. The cost of housing was so expensive. So I don't know if you can see we're eastbound now. I don't know if you can see in the westbound lanes how the traffic is just sitting. So similar situation, you have 2, 3-lane, 4-lane freeways that merge into 3 lanes for the causeway, and traffic is always stop and go, either as they're merging or on the causeway once they're merged. So. All right, well, this is a shout out for Matt and Katie, Ocean City, Maryland, 3,073 miles on that sign back there. That's the starting point for Highway 50. It ends at Ocean City, Maryland, 3,073 miles to the east. So shout out to Matt and Katie. You can see all the industrial, tilled up commercial, warehouse, industrial buildings along the freeway here. This is sort of the old West Sacramento. South of Sacramento along the river is where a lot of the nicer residential development is. You'll have 800 houses, a neighborhood shopping center, the usual suburban sprawl plan. 800 houses, 200,000 square foot grocery store, drugstore with maybe 50, 60,000 square feet of strip spaces around the big box grocery pharmacy. I've got to watch myself. I was doing a little over 80. This car, you've got to watch it. It's easy to be cruising along at 80 to 90 miles an hour and just not, I was talking and not really watching the speedometer, and it's easy to lose track of how fast you're going. That turbo is pretty remarkable. It's just a 1.8 liter engine, but once you have momentum going, there's not a lot of low end torque, but once you have momentum going, it has a lot of acceleration. So we're going to go ahead and get off the freeway up here and drive around downtown, midtown a little bit before we get to the apartments. We're merging with, we're intersecting I-5 here, so you can exit eastbound 80, go south on 5 to Stockton, Fresno, Bakersfield, LA. Or go north to Redding, Medford, Eugene, Portland. Crossing the Sacramento River right now. This is a typical summer day, kind of pale blue sky, maybe a cloud or two here and there, but basically uninterrupted pale blue sky, and the sun is just so intense. I read several weeks ago we have some of the most intense sun, even though we're not on the equator, we have some of the most intense sun in the world, actually, in the summertime here. Okay, we'll go downtown on 5th Street, just a short jog. We have to cross under 50 here. This is kind of an old warehouse district over by the river. It's actually, they're doing all kinds of infill residential development along here now. We're just 10 blocks from the state capitol. So, they're tearing down a lot of the warehouses and putting in 1,400 square foot 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouses, PUD owner-occupied townhouses, that they're selling for $300,000 to $450,000 in what was formerly a warehouse district a block and a half from the freeway. Just so many people, they don't want to commute an hour on congested freeways each way to and from work. They want to be closer to their workspace. They also don't want to live in a tract with 100 or 200 houses and a neighborhood shopping center a mile away. They want a more diverse environment that they're living in. Demographically diverse, but also they want to be able to walk down the street to coffee shops, cafes, places where they can congregate, socialize, etc. So anyway, this is kind of a 19-teens, 20s neighborhood. It was actually, historically, this is Japantown. We're at 5th and U now. 40 years ago, we used to come down here for, raw salmon, raw tuna, before the sushi craze. Aoba Cafe used to be down here. This wonderful little, most of the people in there were Japanese, and authentic Japanese food and very affordable. really nice. So anyway, you can see some of the recent new buildings in Sacramento straight ahead. This is 5th and Q here. We'll go ahead and go down to Capitol, and we're at 5th and P here. This was Cindy's office at Caltrans here at 5th and P for 15 years. She initially worked up at the state headquarters building. They moved her down to 5th and P, and she basically is retired now. She has maybe 1 or 2 days where she's going to go in and transition some of her projects to other folks, but she's pretty much done there now. So anyway, you can't see it, but this building in front of us is probably about 40 stories, 35 to 45 stories. Nice stone exterior. The King's Arena is straight ahead. We're not going to go by that. I want to go up toward the Capitol, but they tore down an urban, center city shopping center and built a $550 million King's Arena. And people thought this Silicon Valley billionaire, an Indian guy, his last name is Ranjadive, something like that. They thought he was, wasting his money. He spent $550 million to buy the Kings, and he spent he paid for a lot of the $550 million to build the Kings Arena. But NBA teams now are easily selling for $1 billion, $1.5 billion, 4 or 5 years after he bought the team. And people are spending $700, $800, $900 million on arenas. So he actually got in pretty cheap. He's probably doubled his investment in just a few years. So anyway, State Capitol straight ahead. And this is Capitol Mall, the original Class A 25, 35, 45, 55 story office buildings are along Capitol Mall here. The high-profile law firms, Wells Fargo Bank headquarters, etc. That kind of thing is all here. So anyway, we'll go ahead and drive around the Capitol grounds a little bit, and then head off to the apartments. Maybe we'll do a jog or two in Midtown, but basically we're in the heart of downtown now. The Capitol, they think they spent about $100 million renovating it 30 years ago. I know some of the contractors, when I was managing a historical renovation, some of the contractors we hired to renovate this 5,000 square foot mansion. A friend of mine was converting to a bed and breakfast on 21st Street between T and U. It's called Vizcaya now. But some of those contractors also were bidding on the Capitol renovation. So they hired the best of the best to renovate the Capitol. So it wasn't just low cost building. They hired the best people they could find to renovate the Capitol. So anyway, photo opportunities in front of the Capitol. Probably a recent college graduate. Looks like it might be a nice Vietnamese family. So anyway, we've got to turn left here. We're directly in front of the Capitol now. Beautiful building. Cindy, for I think about 5 or 7 years, worked right across the street from Capitol on N Street around 13th and N. And really pretty park area around. We'll go ahead and drive around the Capitol, but actually we can't do that here. So anyway, maybe we'll go ahead and go up to J Street, which is one of the main commercial streets in downtown Sacramento, also Midtown. So this is K here, but the convention center, the old Memorial Hall, a lot of really nice restaurants and average restaurants along J Street. There are probably 40 or 50 restaurants in a 12, 14 block area on J Street. So a lot of people they kind of make a project or a game, or just for fun. They'll start at one end of J Street and work toward the other end and eat at a different place for lunch every day. Some people probably blog it, but it's kind of a fun thing to do. A lot of the restaurants are pretty good. So anyway, off to the right here, you can see some of the legacy of downtown. There aren't many boarded up storefronts like that anymore. 25 years ago there were quite a few, but most of those are either being renovated or torn down and replaced with, they're doing 15-story condo towers, 25-story condo and hotel and apartment towers. Kind of like a San Francisco phenomenon where they'll build a 45-story, condo apartment tower, maybe 8 or 10 floors of the tower will be a hotel. There are a couple of projects like that over by the Kings Arena. I think that tech billionaire actually is also financing or a partner in some of those hotel projects. I think there's 3 or 4 total they're doing within a couple blocks of the Kings Arena. So 45 years ago, when I first drove through downtown Sacramento, I couldn't believe I was driving through the state capital of California. There was no plaza downtown, so it was all these 1920s, 30s, and 40s storefronts. A shoe store here, men's clothing store there, whatever. Just, typical Main Street, Americana, USA, mom and pop retailers. That's what downtown Sacramento was, and everything looked kind of faded, and there were people standing around, winos drinking out of brown paper bags everywhere. The railroad, a lot of hobos get on, they hop a freight car in Omaha or Iowa City or whatever, and they go west, for the winter. And Sacramento is the final destination. This is where the train stops. So, historically, there's just been a lot of transients in Sacramento. And, the Bee just had an article. The city just spent, I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars last year to move. I think they moved 1,800 to 2,000 people off the street. They form these campgrounds, sometimes with 100, 150 people in them, along river levees or whatever. And so they go around, they kind of round them up, they try to get them Section 8 housing vouchers or whatever, get them off the street. And